Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how families manage when money is really tight even if the rest of the world is falling apart? Today we're diving into some fascinating research that looks at how parents facing economic hardship manage their daily lives and what strengths they find in themselves and their children. It's easy for science to focus on all the bad stuff that happens when families are struggling with money. And that's important to know. But this study took a different approach instead of just looking at problems. They wanted to understand how families adapt and what strengths they use to get through it all. They talked to parents about their daily lives, their challenges, and the things that make them proud. So what did they find? Get ready for some real talk about family life. They discovered that even when things are really tough, families have incredible ways of adapting. This research used a really cool method. They had parents record short videos talking about their lives, answering questions about their kids, their challenges, and their strengths. Imagine that instead of just filling out a survey, parents got to share their stories in their own words, on their own time. This gave us a much richer picture than just numbers and statistics. After they collected all these video reflections, they turned them into text and used a fancy computer program to find patterns in the language. Think of it like a super smart way to sort through tons of information and find the main ideas. But they didn't stop there. A team of researchers then read through all of this, making sure they understood what the parents were really saying. Because sometimes words alone don't capture the whole feeling, they organize these ideas into 6 main meta-topics, which are like big themes that tell the story of how families adapt. The first big theme was how everyday family routines, like meals, bedtime, and homework, are actually the places where families experience both the strain of hardship and their ways of adapting. Even though these routines can be tough, they're also where families connect and try to create some sense of normalcy. Then they found this really important theme about cascading costs and the hidden labor of getting by. This means that even small unexpected expenses like $10 for a trampoline park could mess up a whole month's budget. Parents had to do a lot of hidden labor, which is like working extra hard behind the scenes. Making tough choices about what to cut back on, sometimes even their own needs, to make sure their kids were taken care of. Next, they looked at support. It wasn't just about having friends or family around, but how that support worked. It came from relationships, community, faith, and schools. But it was often hard to actually get that support when they needed it due to distance, rules, or even shame. One of the most heartwarming themes was about children's relational strength and adaptive capacities. Parents talked about their kids' empathy, kindness, flexibility, and how they learned to cope with challenges. These weren't always the kind of strength that traditional tests measure, but they were deeply important to the families. Then there was the idea of family resourcefulness, repair, and perseverance. This is where families as a whole learn to work together, plan, ask for help, and keep striving towards their goals, even when things were difficult. It was all about being a team and not giving up. And finally, and this is a really big one, they found that families were actively pushing back against stigma, structural constraint, and fuller narratives of hardship. Parents talked about how poverty is misunderstood and judged, often being seen as laziness or a moral failure. They wanted people to understand the bigger picture, the structural issues and the real struggles they faced, while also highlighting their own resilience and adaptations. They wanted their stories to be told more completely. So what does all this mean? Well, it tells us that if we only focus on the problems families face with money, we miss a huge part of their story. Families are actively adapting and finding strengths in their everyday lives. The idea that families in poverty might be disorganized or less engaged, as some research suggests, is challenged here. Instead, the chaos they described often comes from their incredible effort to coordinate and care for their children under very difficult circumstances. It is not a lack of effort, but an abundance of adaptive effort. And the strengths parents see in their children, like empathy and flexibility, are incredibly valuable even if they're hard to measure in a lab. These are the skills that help them navigate their world. The lack of financial margin or buffer is a critical point. It means that ordinary costs can become crises, leading to this poor tax, where families end up paying more in the long run due to debt, stress, and health issues because they couldn't afford things up front. Support is crucial, but it needs to be accessible, trusted, and understand the real challenges families face. It is not just about having programs, but about having programs that work for people, not against them. The shame and stigma associated with needing help also create huge barriers. And this last point about stigma is so important. Families are tired of being judged. They want to be seen as more than just their financial struggles. They want their resilience, their adaptations, and their strengths to be recognized. They're not asking for hardship to be ignored, but for a more balanced story that includes their agency and their efforts. Now, like any study, this one has its limitations. The group of parents they talked to was relatively small and based in the US, and they all spoke English and were comfortable with smartphones. This means we need to be careful about applying these findings to everyone. Future research should look at larger and more diverse groups, including fathers and people who might have language or tech barriers. This study looked at how parents described their strength, but it didn't track whether those strengths led to better outcomes later on. That's a great question for future research. But overall, this research is fantastic because it uses a powerful mixed methods approach. It combines the scale of computer analysis with the deep understanding of human interpretation. This is a big step forward in how we study poverty and its effects. What this research really tells us is that families facing economic hardship don't need interventions that assume they lack care or capacity. They need support that recognizes the hard work they're already doing and makes that work less costly to sustain. It's about acknowledging their strengths and addressing the structural issues that create the hardship in the first place. So, what's my take on this? I think this study is a game changer. By listening to parents directly and using cutting-edge methods, it provides a much more nuanced and respectful view of families navigating poverty. It highlights their incredible resilience, their resourcefulness, and their love for their children. The biggest takeaway for me is the call for a more balanced narrative, one that acknowledges the real challenges, but also celebrates the strengths and adaptations that get families through. Future research should definitely build on this by looking at how these identified strengths and adaptations play out over time, and importantly, how different cultural and community contexts shape these experiences. We also need more studies that explicitly incorporate the voices of fathers and other caregivers. What do you think about these findings? Does this resonate with your own experiences or observations? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating science stories. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. See you next time!